Tulsi is in, which means yet another disaffected Democrat is added to Donald Trump's roster, and Chicken Kamala, well, she doesn't want to debate Trump without notes. I wonder why. The show starts now.
Whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, if you love our country, as I do, if you cherish peace and freedom as we do, I invite you to join me in doing all that we can to save our country and elect President Donald J. Trump and send him back to the White House to do the tough work of saving our country and serving the people.
So this is great. Another former Democrat, and not just a Democrat, but also a Democrat presidential contender just 4 years ago, Tulsi Gabbard, threw her support behind Donald Trump. This is important not just because she's a disaffected Democrat turned independent by the disasters that are Joe and Kamala, but also because of this little nugget of greatness from 2020 when Tulsi effectively ended Kamala.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris.
Is it a wonder Kamala doesn't want to debate? Well, her presidential campaign never recovered from that blow, and without the help of Barack Obama, her political career may have been over. That's why Tulsi's help and guidance will be invaluable to Donald Trump, especially considering the first debate is just a couple weeks away. Well, maybe, because surprise, surprise, Kamala is trying to rewrite the rules of that too. Democrats swapped out a whole-ass candidate, and they are so greedy and so entitled that they want more. Kamala's team is now calling for the ABC debate scheduled for September 10th to be seated, for mics to remain open, and of course, Kamala wants notes. Why the hell should Trump agree to that? It's been over a month since Joe was pushed out, and Kamala has refused to hold a press conference, a formal interview, or answer any meaningful questions at all. Her campaign website doesn't even have a tab for policy. You know, someone with a brain over there at Team Harris could have written the tab for her, but they won't even do that. Kamala and her team want you to play Russian roulette with your vote. Vote for her and Tampon Tim first, and then find out what they'll do to America later. I don't think so. Kamala needs to step up to the plate, stop phoning it in, and face the music. But I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Joining me now is Battleground Live host Sean Parnell to weigh in on all of that and more. Sean, I want to start out with that. So Kamala promised us before the end of the month we were going to get a sit-down interview. Now, the latest reports are that she's scrambling to find a worthy journalist of her time, but she's only got a couple days left. I mean, is she going to schedule this thing for Labor Day at, 4 in the afternoon? I'm not sure, but do you think she's going to make it happen?
I mean, maybe. But who can make a prediction in this day and age? I mean, we are living through some of the craziest political times, I think, ever in this country. First, you have an assassination attempt against former President Trump, and then Obama and Kamala shank Biden, remove him as the candidate. All that we got, Tommy, was a post on Twitter/X that was digitally signed, not on presidential letterhead. Kamala Harris is selected, not elected. As you said, 0 policy positions on her website at all. She's been in the race for over a month, hasn't done a single interview, hasn't done a single press conference. And clearly, and while the media is trying to gaslight us into believing otherwise, that she's somehow an exciting candidate, that she's charismatic, that the cameras just absolutely love her, they know, along with the people who are running her campaign, that Kamala Harris has a very real problem. And that problem existed in 2020 when she was running for president and had to drop out before a single vote was cast. And that problem is the more Kamala Harris talks, the less people like her. And it's particularly problematic when you're running a campaign, because the harder a candidate works, the more often they're in front of people, the more interviews they do, the less popular they get. And I think you're seeing that reflected in the campaign now, with, it seems like, at least to a certain extent, that her momentum has stalled post the Democrat National Convention, and Trump just seems to be on the rise again. So we'll see if we get that interview. But my guess is they're going to try to hide her for as long as humanly possible, because I think that's their only hope and prayer of actually winning this thing.
Or she will do an interview. She'll get the questions beforehand. They will be approved. And she will have several days to curate her answers. That's what I'm afraid of, really, because same thing with the debate. I am worried that conservative pundits and media and Trump supporters are going to overhype this first interview. And then when she sits down and does the interview, obviously, she's going to have somebody who's going to go easy on her to begin with. The media is in love with her and she doesn't have to give them anything in return. But she'll probably get a heads up what the questions are. And then she'll probably perform okay. And then it'll be like, see, guys, she did fine. So I'm concerned that we're going to build this up too much. She'll have too much preparation and she'll have too much advanced knowledge of what she's going to be asked, and she'll do well. And then I'm fearful that that will give her a pass to avoid the media even longer.
Maybe. I mean, the thing is like, I'm sure you saw the news today, Kamala coming out and saying she's going to build the wall. Now, if there was an OG Trump position, it's building the wall. And of course, Kamala has co-opted a no tax on tips. The American people, at least the vast majority of the American people, are smart. And I think they see through that nonsense. And I think trust, especially in the mainstream media, is at an all-time low. And when people go into that voting booth, even people maybe that aren't like you or me, Tommy, where we're tethered into politics, we pay attention every day. Most people don't pay attention till 30, 60 days before a general election. And oftentimes when they go into that voting booth, they make a simple calculation. What does my bank account look like? And what is life like under this administration? And I think 3 short years ago, the vast majority of Americans thought that life was easier, better, more prosperous under Trump, that their kids could maybe go on a field trip into the city. They didn't have to worry about crime. They weren't paying an arm and a leg for groceries. They could afford to put fuel in the gas tank of their car. Their 401k was worth more. And then literally, by every empirical metric under the Biden-Harris administration, their lives, the American people's lives, are far better off. So when they go into the election booth, I really think it's going to be a look at those two things: what life was like under Trump, what life is like under Biden and Harris now. And I think they're going to pull the lever accordingly. And I share your concern to a certain extent. I mean, media propaganda is real. It always has been. And it can be in certain ways effective. But the narrative, the conditions in America right now, especially the economic conditions and the price of commodities, food and fuel, also coupled with inflation and this border problem, it's difficult to hide. It's damn near impossible to hide. The American people see it, and I think no amount of media spin is gonna trick them into believing otherwise.
Yeah, I'm just fearful that she's going to be able to pin a lot of the failures on Joe Biden. I think that was always the plan. I've been saying it for years. Everything that went horribly, she's going to pin on Joe. And if you listen to the way that she speaks, even in her DNC convention speech, where she said to Joe, trying to congratulate him, like, your record has been so great. But she didn't say our record. And the same thing about Afghanistan. She was infamously the last person in the room. But now, even if you look at some of the language, she really wants Joe to take credit for that disaster as well. And neither of them bothered to do anything to commemorate the 3-year anniversary besides put out a tweet or a post. So that, to me, I didn't expect anything else. But I do think she's going to be successful in pinning a lot of the failures on Joe, and that's unfortunate. But I want to talk about something else in terms of the election and what could sway it, and maybe what swayed it the last time. Bombshell news really breaking last night about Zuckerberg kind of apologizing for mass censorship of not only COVID-19 and vaccine information, which I was personally censored on Facebook for, but also for the Hunter Biden laptop story. So he's kind of trying to say like, oh, whoopsies, please forgive me. But really, to me, this is telling me that he kind of wants to apologize and then protect himself from any retribution that he should receive for what he's done? How big of an impact do you think this is going to make?
Well, I mean, let's just be honest here. Mark Zuckerberg has access to a lot of data that can tap into where public sentiment is heading. And as I read this news, I think late yesterday when this information came out, I wondered, is he seeing something behind the scenes that would lead him to believe that Republicans might take back control or continue to keep control of the House, take control of the Senate and win the White House? And if that's the case, right, then you got to believe that if you're in Mark Zuckerberg's shoes, that there is going to be a certain level of retribution against Facebook for all the censorship that happened during COVID, all the censorship that happened during 2020. Republicans like Jim Jordan in the House of Representatives have been all over this issue. So if he sees that public sentiment is shifting to where it's going to be difficult for Democrats. I mean, granted, let me just caveat all of this by saying that this election is going to be close. We should always campaign like we're 10 points down. But does Zuckerberg have access to something that would give him a sense that public sentiment might be swaying and he's trying to get ahead of it, as you said, because he thinks Republicans are going to take control? We'll see. But it absolutely had an impact during the 2020 race. The interference, I mean, it's what he did in censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story is tantamount to election interference in its purest form. I've seen, polling that would indicate that if the American people knew the truth about their Hunter Biden laptop in the moment, between 7% and 15% of people would have changed their vote. And that was easily enough, even with all of the disastrous stuff that happened during 2020, that would have been easily enough to sway the election in Trump's favor. So we will see, keep our ear to the ground on this, but it certainly seems like Zuckerberg knows something that we don't.
That could be. I also think that on the flip side of that, he might be concerned that we are going to get a President Harris and a Tim Walz, and maybe he doesn't like the fact that he knows that administration would ask him and his companies to censor more. Look no further than Tim Walz from 2022 talking about how much he's going to defend free speech. Let's take a listen to Tampon Tim.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Yeah. So there's no guarantee to free speech, and you can't protect hate speech unless they're pro-Hamas terrorist sympathizers. Then they're protected. But that tells me that a Harris-Walz administration would censor the hell out of us.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that I mean, Walz is a stolen valor. Pathological liar, lied about conceiving children with IVF, lied about his military record, said that he just misspoke about his rank, but he literally etched the rank Command Sergeant Major on a coin in steel, sent his soldiers into the fray, into combat while he cut sling load on them and ran. I mean, the guy's the worst of the worst. But what he said there shouldn't surprise anybody who's watching or listening to this program, because the Democrats today are not the Democrat Party of old. They are the party of many authoritarian communists, fascists. And I think that's why people like RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard are jumping on the Trump train, because they realize that their party is fundamentally changed. This ain't your grandpa's Democrat Party anymore. And I say this as someone who comes from a family of Western Pennsylvania Union Democrats who, for their entire lives, these people will never switch their voter registration. They love this country. They're pro-life. They're pro-gun Democrats. They just believe that the Democrat Party was for the little guy. That ain't the case anymore, as evidenced by that soundbite of Tim Walz that you just played, talking about, well, the First Amendment doesn't really exist for misinformation. Of course, the real question is, what's misinformation? And it's anything that would disagree with the Democrat narrative or agenda while they're in power. So, you mentioned at the beginning of the show, Trump building this coalition of Democrats. That really matters in places like Western Pennsylvania, Tommy, where there are, tens of thousands of Democrats are feeling like their party left them and they're homeless and don't have a place to go. But yeah, I think they recognize that the Democrat Party presents a very unique and existential threat to the democratic republic that we live in here in America. And people are rising up from all walks of life to try to put a stop to it. So again, we will see what happens in 2024. The race is going to be close, but it seems to me that people are finally understanding the stakes, and that's a good thing.
I think the Tulsi endorsement is really important. RFK
Yes.
Jr. endorsement was important, but Trump was kind of already doing well with those kind of libertarian leaning Democrat RFK Joe Rogan types. He was already doing pretty well with them, but the gender gap is huge, especially with young women. And I think that Tulsi can do a lot of work to maybe repair that, to reach out to female voters. I think she's got an appeal to females. And, she ended Kamala Harris in that 2019 debate. I mean, Kamala didn't even make it to friggin' 2020. Tulsi just ended her right there. So I hope that Trump listens to Tulsi. I hope she goes out and campaigns forcefully for Donald Trump. But do you think that this could be difference making? You mentioned Pennsylvania, but in other places, could this be difference making?
Yes, because in Pennsylvania, the Democrats have a registration, a voter registration advantage of, 320,000 registered Democrats. So the Democrats can win a race here in Pennsylvania without a single Republican vote. And the reality is that, yes, of course, to answer your question directly, RFK Jr. and Tulsi, their endorsement makes a difference in a state like Pennsylvania, where, as I said, tens of thousands of Democrats, especially in the western part of the state, feel like their party has left them. I can't drive 30 minutes from my house in any direction and not encounter a town that has been left behind by politicians. Many of the people in those towns are lifelong Democrats who worked in steel, who worked in coal, who worked in manufacturing and oil and gas. These are legacy type jobs, Tomi, whose father and grandfather worked before them. And telling these people to learn to code or find different work, which is what Democrats say today, is insulting to them. And these towns have completely collapsed. And those people in those towns, and there are hundreds of them all across Pennsylvania, they feel left behind by their party. And they're looking for a political home. And they're wondering if the Republican Party might be that home. Bringing people like RFK Jr. on board and bringing people, as you mentioned, as Tulsi, especially, she's a woman, a young woman who's articulate and she's strong. And yeah, I think it matters a lot to Democrats who are wondering if they can trust the Republican Party. And then you look at what Trump did today by putting RFK Jr. and Tulsi on his transition team. Again, it's a very smart move because it shows those Democrats wondering if the Republican Party is for them, that they are going to have a voice in the next Trump administration. And in a state like Pennsylvania, it matters a lot.
I agree. Do you think that Donald Trump's campaign made a boo-boo, an F-up when they chose their running mate, J.D. Vance? Do you think that maybe bringing in RFK Jr. and Tulsi, maybe that will also be a distraction from the unlikability and unfavorability of J.D. Vance? Because the numbers don't lie. Tampon Tim goes out and does rocket kicks like he's auditioning for the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, but he still has a more favorable polling average than J.D. Vance does. I've liked the interviews J.D. Vance has done on the Sunday shows for the last couple of weeks, but the connotation and the perception of him is still not great with a lot of independent voters. So I'm a little concerned.
I'm not. J.D. Vance is great at what he does. He's articulate. He understands what time it is, right? And this goes for any local, state, federal Republican politician. Your job is not to be ingratiated by the media. J.D. Vance understands the moment that we're in as a country. He's from a state like Ohio, demographically almost identical to the state of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. We need as many people to rally, working class people to rally to our cause. And J.D. Vance speaks to the heart of those people. And he also handles the media exceptionally well. I've been on the campaign trail with him very recently, where he does a stand-up press conference and takes questions from anyone who asks and answers them in ways that are, as a conservative, hard to disagree with, but also does it with grace and he does it with professionalism. And I think, again, come November, on Election Day, the American people are going to see that a guy like Tim Walz, you look at his record, you look at the stolen valor stuff, you look at the lies about everything. Yeah, he's also kind of a weirdo doing rocket kicks out on the stage. And then you have a guy who's legitimately out there in front of the media answering questions in good faith. That matters to the American people. And also, it's going to matter a hell of a lot in the Rust Belt in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, where J.D. Vance does an exceptional job speaking to the heart of the working class person that feels left behind.
I agree with you on that point, but I'm looking at the numbers and I can't figure out why his numbers are so bad. And, well, actually I can. He pissed off women. And You know what? Women, we hold a grudge. And that's just the fact of the matter. Like, once you personally piss off women, it's a climb to win them back over. And JD Vance is going to have to make that climb. Whether it's deserved or not, it really doesn't matter. I'm worried about the favorability numbers. I agree with you. I think he is excellent in interviews and his sit downs. And I've been very impressed with him, especially when he does kind of the town hall style Q&As at some of these rallies. Very impressed. But my concern about that is that the people that need to watch it, that need to maybe learn to like him or to have him grow on them, I don't know if they're watching JD Vance rallies and press conferences. I think they're only seeing the viral moments that they saw from 2021 and 2022 of JD Vance.
Yeah, I mean, look, here, a lot of the contention over JD Vance came from people who wanted somebody else as vice president, especially on the Republican side.
Yeah.
A lot of those stories were planted by people who did not like JD Vance, did not want him selected. You know, he's a young senator from Ohio. There's this real issue in the Republican Party today of the whole, it's not your turn, it's not your turn. I don't like that. JD Vance is young. He's the future of the Republican Party. He's the next generation. He's very steeped in policy and understands the issue. He was wildly successful in the Senate as a freshman senator. And again, he's from Ohio. And, you know, he's going to be in Western Pennsylvania here, I think, tomorrow, campaigning heavy in Pennsylvania. So, like, showing up matters to these voters. And so a lot of the media narrative, a lot of the numbers, I mean, it shouldn't surprise anybody that maybe his favorability is a little bit down when the media relentlessly attacks him with lies and hoaxes all the time, you know? But I think that, you know, he'll be able to, if he has to at all, claw his way back, you know, but people at the end of the day, which is a phrase far too overused at the end of the day, but this is about president, right? Trump, to me, you know, I've said it before on your show, he's the most electrifying political figure in my lifetime, maybe of all time. And people are voting for the top of the ticket, you know? It's going to come down to Harris and it's going to come down to Trump. And whether or not people see what their life was like under Biden Harris, see what their life is like under Donald Trump, and that's the calculation that they're going to make. How they feel about JD Vance, and again, I question the favorability view. I think he's an extraordinarily likable guy. Everywhere
yeah, but you're a Trump voter, Sean. You're a Trump voter. So you're going to like him anyway. So here's my concern about this, because I talked to a lot of people who are not Republicans, and the first thing that they say to me, because they were going to vote for Trump, as recently as last week when I was in New York, and my driver is somebody who's lifelong Democrat, wanted to vote for Trump because he was so sick of Biden Harris, but he was so enraged by the JD Vance pick that now he's considering what he's going to do. So I'm talking to people and I'm talking to women, and that is my concern. You like him, but is he reaching out to people that need to like Donald Trump or that need to be swayed to like Donald Trump when they were right on the edge there? I think, and I'm going to end this with this, I think if he would have picked someone like a Glenn Youngkin, somebody who's just likable by a lot of folks, I think that it wouldn't be such a steep hill to climb. I think people that didn't want to vote for Trump, that wanted his policies, would have maybe been more likely to vote for Trump if they had a Glenn Youngkin in that position. But that's neither here nor there. We got what we got, and we got to work on it. I think JD Vance, quite frankly, should get a couple cats, and I think he should go everywhere with them. I think that just needs to be what he does. Last thing I do want to ask you about, though, is kind of what we started with, and that's the debate. Do you think it's going to happen? And do you think that Trump should cave and take the debate, even though Kamala wants notes, and she wants the mics on, and she wants to be seated? I mean, I don't know what else she wants, but I'm guessing they're going to give her the world. The world is her, the world is her oyster at this point. Do you think Trump should cave?
No, definitely not. I mean, you remember the narrative, Tommy? It was like, oh, Trump agrees to a debate with Biden, right? And then Biden gets shanked, withdrawn from the race. Kamala's, selected. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, Trump is a coward, doesn't want to debate Kamala. Well, he agreed to debate Biden. So Trump says, yeah, sure, I'll debate Kamala, all the same rules in place. So now that Trump agrees, Kamala wants to change all the rules after the fact, and she wants to do it unilaterally while the media runs cover for her. I say, stick to your guns on this. You've already given a little bit and agreed to the debate on ABC. Kamala's not agreeing to any debate on, say, Fox News, for example. I say just stick to your guns. The rules are the rules. I mean, take it from someone who's actually debated and had their name on the ballot. Once you agree to those rules, they don't change, and they shouldn't change here either. As far as whether she debates or not, Again, nothing would surprise me. I think that she's doing this as a way to kind of pull back from the debate. I think she's trying to sow a little chaos and give herself a reason to walk away from the debate. But we'll see.
And she really wants those notes, by the way. She really, I think that's the biggest part of it. I think she wants the mics on because she wants Trump to interrupt her. But I also, that's what she wants.
I'm speaking. She wants that. I'm speaking, Mr. President. That's what she wants. And I don't know if it's going to work for her, Tommy. I don't know. I don't know.
She's going to do whatever she can. She does not want to be on that debate stage because of what happened last time. It didn't go well. However, she did, just objectively speaking, she did perform okay against Mike Pence. So again, I think that overconfidence is going to be the Achilles heel of the Trump campaign. I don't think we can be overconfident for 1 second, 1 moment. Always act like the underdog. And I think that's the best case scenario. But I always appreciate your time and your analysis of everything. And we'll wait and see if we get a debate. I'm sure looking forward to it.
Yep. Thanks, Tommy, as always, for having me. Thank you.
Good to see you. All right, folks, on to this. California Democrats, like Kamala Harris, well, they want to help illegals buy homes. So get out your pocketbooks again, America. It's time for Final Thoughts. So just in case you've been fooled into thinking the Democrat Party has moderated itself, well, don't worry, because California liberals, they will set the record straight. The California legislature, made up of a supermajority of Democrats, have put forth a proposal they'll likely pass to make their undocumenteds eligible for up to $150K in state-supported home loans. Yeah, the state with the largest population of both illegals and homeless people has put forth a proposal to pass out state-sponsored home buying assistance to non-citizens. There are at least 11 million of them in California, by the way. The program is called California Dream for All, how inclusive. And it provides 20% down payment assistance up to $150,000. The program is funded by the likely soon-to-be bankrupt state of California, as well as the California Housing Finance Agency. The bill's oh-so-generous author and Fresno Democrat Joaquin Arambula, Pinky, promises this eligibility won't be passed out willy-nilly. And of course, who are we to question a California Democrat on his freebies? He insists applicants would have to meet standards set by Fannie Mae and have a tax ID or a social security number to apply. Nifty, but guess what? They are still not citizens, and passing out more perks to non-citizens only attracts more non-citizens into our already full country. On a little side note here, the Dream for All program launched in 2023 and ran out of funding in just 11 days after roughly $300 million was scarfed up and more than 2,100 home buyers secured loans. Now add millions of non-citizens, and I'm sure that'll just go great. Gavin Newsom hasn't signaled what he'll do with the bill yet, but I'm sure he's weighing the political implications on Kamala. She doesn't believe a human can be illegal, after all, or at least she did, but she won't really tell us where her heart is now because Obama hasn't told her yet. But this proposal further highlights the crapstorm we are headed for nationwide. I don't think I have to remind you all that we have millions of illegals in this country, and while many of them are being put up in shelters or hotels right now, sucking off the government teat, that's a temporary Band-Aid. Eventually, they will leave the shelters and the hotels, and they'll need somewhere to go. You think we have an affordable housing shortage now? You just wait till millions more illegals flood the system. Or maybe the generous and loving Democrat voters will offer to house them, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Those are my final thoughts from Nashville. God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I will be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.